So being introduced into a fine dining restaurant as a young 20-something or late teen, that was really when my wine journey began, because it opened my eyes to the world of wine that was out there. I had moved from Australia to Vancouver, BC, where there was a lot more international wine in Vancouver, British Columbia than there was in Australia at that time. And so it really opened the world of wine to me, and being able to discover what a Syrah tasted like from the Rhone Valley versus the Okanagan Valley versus Paso Robles versus the Barossa Valley had never even occurred to a 20-year-old from Queensland in Australia at that time. And so my wine journey really began back then, which was well over 20 years ago now. My first interactions with my wine director at that restaurant were about pursuing wine certifications, and how did I learn more about this amazing beverage that I have. And so that was something that started my path down the Wine and Spirit Education Trust programs, starting with the level 1 WSET program and level 2, and then moving into sommelier certifications. And as I moved out of Vancouver and across the country, I continued to pursue teaching opportunities and education opportunities, working as a sommelier. And then moving back to Australia, I started teaching the Wine and Spirit Education Trust classes in Melbourne and Brisbane of Australia, and continuing to develop my wine knowledge through the WSET programs and taking the diploma certification. As I was finishing the diploma certification, I came back to my first wine director, who at the time, when she was being wine director in Vancouver, and when I had first met her, she was just starting her journey as a student in the Master of Wine program. And so I had the honor of going down to the cellar at night at the end of the shift and pulling out a few bottles of wine to blind taste her on, and watching how the Master of Wine process really was about assessing what was in the glass and what the growing environment, the soil types, the climate, the weather, everything that contributed to the characters of the wine in that glass, and the cultural terroir of the winemakers and the producers in that region. And that was really intriguing to me. It was like a find your own adventure kind of, problem to solve. And so as I was completing my diploma certification, more than a decade after I had been working at that restaurant in Vancouver, it came back to me that my next step is to complete the Master of Wine. And I felt by that time I was ready. I'd been in the wine industry for more than a decade. I'd worked in almost every role in the wine industry, apart from production at that point. I had worked as a sommelier. I had worked in retail. I had worked as a sales rep for portfolios of wine. I had worked for one of Australia's largest family wine producers, selling wine to key accounts around the country. And then started working with an importer to import Spanish and Portuguese wines, and actually selecting the wines that I thought would work best in the market, and really seeking out organic and sustainable producers for that program. And so I'd really done all of the work that I could outside of becoming a winemaker. And I felt like then my next role was to do the Master of Wine program. And so that was in 2012 when I started the Master of Wine. And it's a program that is renowned for being notoriously difficult. Less than 10% of people who enter the program pass the program. So I was, prepared to do a lot of hard work to get myself up to the speed of what I needed to be a successful candidate in the Master of Wine program. In 2013, after my stage one week-long study program, I realized pretty quickly that the one place or couple of places that I was really missing the knowledge that I needed to pass and be a successful candidate in the Master of Wine program was that I needed to have more viticulture and winemaking experience. And that took me around the world then, as I decided that, well, my role now was to become a harvest intern around the world and in as many places as I possibly could, so I could learn as many regions and wine styles at the time. And that's what I did. I moved to a part-time workload of being a WSET educator for a couple of schools in Melbourne, and the rest of the time I would travel the world doing an endless harvest. And so I worked in Portugal, Spain, Austria, Germany, Georgia, Oregon, and of course Australia, working harvest and really making sure that I understood how those flavors and components in this glass of wine came to be, from how the growing conditions provided certain characteristics, and then how the culture in the cellar also provided certain characteristics. And so that was how I, came to be in 2014 at my Master of Wine exam. In June of 2014, I sat down for the 4-day exam, and that was an intensive process. It's an exam where each morning you spend 2 hours doing a practical exam of 12 wines, where you need to identify and answer questions that from vintage to production methods to suitability in the marketplace, a host of other questions, but basically you need to identify what's in the wine, how it got there, what are the contributing factors to what make this wine this wine. And so that was every morning of those 4 days. And then in the afternoons, we would come in and do 3 theory questions each afternoon around the main disciplines in the wine category. So viticulture, enology, wine business, and wine trends. And so that was the afternoon sessions. And I finished that week, and it was a grueling and intensive but thrilling week. And 3 months later, I found out that I passed both portions of the Master of Wine exam on my first time. So that was one of the highlights of 2014 for sure, was being able to get that phone call that I was now successful in the examination of the Master of Wine program, and now I need to do my research paper. And so that took another 18 months. And then finally in 2016, I became a Master of Wine officially at the Vintners Hall here in London. And that was just an incredible journey, grueling, but incredible journey of understanding this beautiful beverage.